Golic and Smetty here.
Aw, you're a get off my lawn guy now.
And welcome to another edition of Golic and Smetty. Mike Golic Sr. here, Jessica Smetana, as well, back from some well-deserved time off.
Thank you.
Back and better than ever. How we feeling?
I feel great. Everyone needs to go on vacation, get a little tan, drink some hard seltzers, enjoy the beach, just having a good time. I also could do that any day because I live in Miami, but it's different when you don't have to go to work first.
Okay, because I was just going to say, wait, what's the difference? You're in Miami. I mean,
I'm just kidding. But yes, Mike, I am back from vacation. I had some time to reflect on the lack of sports things happening over the past couple of weeks. Hasn't been a whole lot. We will talk a little bit about baseball All-Star week, but it was a nice little break. And Mike, I know what you're going to ask me. Did I bake anything?
Yes.
No. The answer is no. I took a vacation from baking as well. I have not baked in 2 weeks now. Probably a little rusty, but you know what? I think this weekend I will be back. I'm probably going to make some sort of muffin thing. I've been eating a lot of muffins lately, so I'll probably bake some muffins.
Now, let me ask you, because here's one of the things. I'm a little disheartened that it's been 2 weeks since you baked something. Do you put a filling in your muffin? Because that's one thing I am not a fan of, is mixing my fruit compote with my dessert.
It's funny you should ask, because literally an hour ago I was eating a fruit muffin and I was telling my boyfriend, I love this muffin because they always put like a secret little strawberry in the middle, and it's like the highlight every time I eat this specific muffin from this bakery. And he was like, do they do that on purpose? And I was like, they sure do, just for me. Just this little tiny strawberry. Mike, it's so good. It's like warm and gooey. I know some people have a thing about not liking hot fruit desserts. I love them. I love fruit dessert. I love fruit cobbler. We talked about that. I made a peach cobbler a couple weeks ago. I love it. I love fruit muffins.
I get a fruit dessert, and apple pie is a fruit dessert. I understand that. A muffin is not a fruit dessert. A muffin should be a muffin.
It basically is, though. Like, it's a dessert that is acceptable to eat for breakfast, I think.
Oh, a muffin? Oh, it is, but don't put fruit in it.
What kind of muffins do you like, then? Just chocolate?
Chocolate, corn muffins, banana nut muffins.
Well, banana's a fruit. I hate to break it to you.
Well, I mean like a compote, like a gooey compote or something like that. Don't hit me with facts, okay? Your facts are just ruining my story, is what's going on.
I'm sorry.
All right, so a muffin product. That's good. Good to know what's coming up next in your life after a vacation. And you're right about it. I remember, doing radio and TV for those decades. This was always when the NBA championship ended. And before training camps, there was about that 5-week period.
Oh, it's the best, Mike. It's the best.
That's when you do.
You can talk about muffins for 30 minutes.
Mount Rushmore of basketball, Mount Rushmore of hockey. You do all the stupid call-in stuff and let the listeners do all the work for you. You talk about food. You talk about the hot dog eating contest. I mean, but man, it can be a 4-hour show. That's when we used to take vacation too, though. I'm not going to lie.
It's the best time of year to take vacation, because then I always, since I was little, my parents have been taking me on this trip with them every July. And every year I get back, and usually the next day is when like college football media days will start. And usually within the next week or two, NFL camp starts. So it's always kind of like the highlight of my summer and also the end of my summer, because then once football season starts, you're kind of like drinking out of a fire hose until February when you can finally take a deep breath after the Super Bowl.
You're so right. Everybody feels like they can rest up and conserve when in late July and August. It's like where we're at now for camps. We'll talk about camps opening up, but man, because it's such a drain on you with all the traveling and all the talk that you have.
Yeah, it really sucks to have to cover sports for a living.
Doesn't it?
But no, Mike, don't get me wrong. I love sports. I love watching sports. I love talking about sports. But there is something about taking like a 6-day break from caring about sports that just makes you love it even more when you come back. Am I right?
You know what I love too is when you go on vacation, you don't care what's going on with your show. I would go on vacation. And people would be like, "Who's filling in?" No idea. Don't know.
Not
don't
my
care.
problem.
No, I'll see you in a week or two. That's going to be about it. So we're going to get into training camps, some NFL, some college. We're going to talk baseball with an excellent Sports Illustrated writer here in just a few minutes. But I have to say, I finally got to Boston, Jess. Me and my wife, Chris, finally got to Boston. We finally got to hold our first grandchild for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, very cool. Again,
are you gonna cry?
No, my wife did.
Okay.
I did not, but she did, but she's a crier. A good phone commercial, and she's crying. So but we finally got here. My son Jake, his wife Jenny, had baby Jackson James Golic about 3 weeks ago, and just we got here, and man, we couldn't get enough of that young man. Just a great looking kid. He was great for us. Just slept on our chest. I don't know. Jake and Jenny talk about how the kid cries and screams at times. We didn't hear any of that. It must just be,
probably you guys.
We're great grandparents.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly right. He understands when he's with the grandparents that he needs to be good. But but man, I forgot again, because it's been since Sydney was a baby. That would be when you were
27 years. Yeah.
Exactly. Of when we had to go through this, of all the kid clothes and the diapers and it's amazing what goes along with a 7-pound ball of flesh, all the things that have to be done. And I'm going to tell you, we got so educated. They haven't, and you don't know anything about this yet, Jess, at this point in your life with no kids, but one of the most amazing things.
I have a dog, but sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me just say, it'll be different, is making the bottles of formula for the baby, of what we had to do with the bottle and the liner and filling it and pushing the air out and blah, 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 blah. Anybody listening who's in the area of my age will understand. Jess, this is unreal now. Like a Keurig coffee machine, there's like a Keurig baby formula machine. It looks exactly like a Keurig. There's the powder in there. You set how many ounces you want made. You put the powder in and the water in, how many ounces you want, how hot you want it, what kind of formula is being used, and it makes it for you.
Technology is amazing.
It's unreal.
Mike, I need to know, are you a grandpa? Are you like a pap? Are you a pop? Like, what? I feel like we might have talked about this, but I can't remember which one you chose.
I'm Pappy.
Pappy,
I'm gonna be
okay.
Pappy.
What about Chris? Is she Grammy?
No.
Seem like a Grammy.
Nothing with Grammy at all. And we wanted to call her Cher at first. It'd be Cher, but I don't think we're going with that one either. I got to ask her real quick. You should know that. Chris, what are you going again for Grandma? Gigi. She's going with Gigi.
I like that you had to confirm. That was
I had to confirm. Yeah, it's Gigi. Yeah, so
it's cute. I like it.
Pappy and Gigi. And people are always like, that kid's going to call you whatever he wants and you're going to melt. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. If that kid wants to learn to get great gifts from Gigi and Pappy, he will learn to call us Gigi and Pappy.
I would love if that kid in like 6 months is like, hey, Mike, come over here.
Mike,
just calling you Mike.
You know what I want? You know what, Jess? I won't even answer him. I won't even turn his way.
Yes, you will.
I know I will, but I have to sound tough right now. But yeah, it's been great to finally. Chris is out feeding him right now. We'll take him out for a walk later. I mean, because we want to bond with them some and give the new parents, a chance to kind of rest, because you have no idea. You can be told everything in the world when you're going to have a baby. Jenny was told everything about this and pregnancy, that and pregnancy, this. You have no clue until you have it. And the biggest thing they found out, and you could be told forever, is they never realize how bad sleep deprivation is. Yes, just how actually tired you get from not being able to sleep when you're up with the kid.
That I can't imagine. We adopted. Comparing a baby to my dog, I know, is quite a choice. But we adopted a dog like a year and a half ago, and for the first few nights, she didn't sleep. She cried all night, and so we were like, had this little tiny 7-pound puppy that just kept us awake all night, and then all day she wanted to play, and it only lasted 3 days, so we survived. But I know that it lasts much longer when it's an actual child that you can't just stick in a crate and leave home alone for 8 hours a day.
That's the one thing you can't do. You can't put them in the crate and take a nap. So, it's just the coolest thing in the world right now. So I'm glad we finally got here. We were supposed to get here a week or so ago. We had dog issue, got sick, and we couldn't put him in the kennel. So we had to wait another week, but it's been very cool. So I've been digging that. and I know you've been digging vacation, but I think it's time to dive back into sports.
It really is. Should we start with football since like football season's starting to slowly warm back up? Or should we
No,
start with baseball?
I think we start with baseball. I think, with All-Star weekend going on, I think that's where we got to go.
All right, let's do it. Very excited to welcome Steph Apstein on to Golic and Smetty. She's my former coworker from Sports Illustrated, where she is a senior writer. She covers all things baseball. Steph is in LA right now for All-Star Week, so we're not going to take up too much of her time. But Steph, I need to know, were you at the Home Run Derby last night?
I was, and it was wild. I have decided I am a huge fan of the Home Run Derby. I especially like the setup last night where they had like strobe lights, a DJ, literal fire, a bunch of big dudes who are just out there to hit long bombs. It's like peak meathead, and it was the perfect vibe, I think, for a ridiculous event. And then it was just great. Someone who might be 42, but probably is older than that, hitting extremely long home runs, like winning the first round. That was wild. Nobody expected him to do really anything. I think a lot of similarly aged people were like, this seems like a terrible idea. He's going to get hurt. And Pujols did great. So that was really fun. We had 21-year-old Julio Rodriguez, who was sort of the star of the night. And then Juan Soto, who's the talk of All-Star Week, looked completely gassed at the end and still managed to pull it out. It was a really good event. I think
We're going to get to Juan Soto for sure, because I got a quote I'm going to read that I can't believe. It's a guy who turned down $440 million. But you're talking about Julio Rodriguez and what he did coming out of the gate, and Albert Pujols could have been his father, 42 and 21. I mean, it was unbelievable. But you mentioned the beginning where they introduced him and brought him out on stage. I thought it was hilarious how they were all, when that fire would go up, they were all like running from it. I was like, oh my God, how dangerous is this? These guys are so close to the fire, they couldn't get off that stage fast enough.
Yeah, it was real fire, and it was really big. I'm not sure the fire department was involved. It was crazy, but it was great. It was great. It's a ridiculous event. They should act like it.
So we have this fun with me and Smetty since I graduated in '85 and her in 2016 with my daughter. I remember when the Home Run Derby was the old way before they changed the rules. And I do like this. I think it is a good way, but it can definitely, you're right. Juan Soto was gassed, and these guys absolutely get gassed at the end. But to see Albert Pujols, and I mean, so take us into that stadium, into the crowd, because Pujols is obviously the fan favorite, and he's up against the number one seed in Kyle Schwarber and ends up beating him on extra swings. That had to be amazing.
It was really fun, and the crowd was really into it. But what was also really fun is that the other players were really into it. They were laughing. I mean, it was just ridiculous. But then they were so excited for him. They sort of swarmed him afterward. They were celebrating him. For a lot of these guys, Latin and not, this guy has been their hero. I mean, almost everybody grew up watching him. They really respect who he is and what he's done in the game. It reminded me a little bit, I mean, it's different in a lot of ways, but it reminded me a little bit of in 1999 at the All-Star game at Fenway when they brought Ted Williams out and the All-Stars just swarmed him. Everybody just wants to be around Albert Pujols. They really respect him. And so they really had a good time watching. And, he can poke fun at himself too. So I think everybody had a good time watching this sort of old man beat up on the kids.
So do you think the opinion around MLB is that the Home Run Derby this year was a big success and some of the rule changes were good for them?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to see more of this. I think it was really fun. And they, usually there's like a hometown guy. This time the closest they got was Corey Seager, who used to play in LA. He got a big pop. The crowd was really into it. I think really the thing that we were most missing was an Astro for them to root against.
Yeah, the only problem with Corey Seager is he went up against Rodriguez in the first round and he hit like 1,000 home runs. Amazing with Julio Rodriguez, he's making the baseball minimum of $700,000 and he got $500,000 for finishing second. So more than crazy that he almost reached his salary. So
there's a lot of incentive for those guys to do well at this event.
Well, maybe not so for Juan Soto when
for the young guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll get. So I want to get into Juan Soto and him again rejecting the $440 million deal with the Nationals now. With the trade deadline, with that's going to be approaching. What do we get a sense of what's going to happen with Juan?
I don't know. I mean, we'll get a sense every day, more of a sense every day from now on, I think, as we get closer to the deadline. I don't know that he's going to be traded at the deadline, but I do think that we now know that he will not sign an extension with the Nationals. I think that they made that pretty clear yesterday. He will certainly not sign an extension during the season. I asked him a lot of guys don't negotiate during the season, and I asked him if he wished he had taken that stance, and he said he did, and he thought he would take it in the future, that he's done dealing with this during the season. So that's it on this season. So the question now is whether they deal him at this deadline or they try again in the offseason. And I just don't think I think that they've got to explore a deal pretty heavily, because they made it pretty clear that he's not planning to be extended. He wants to test free agency. Scott Boras his agent wants to set records. He's got a player who is capable of doing that and who is interested in doing that. And with the Nationals ownership situation in question, I mean, Juan said yesterday, like, we'd like to know who the owner is. Scott Boras said yesterday, I don't think any player would sign when he doesn't know who the owner is going to be. And that's not going to be wrapped up in the next, 2 weeks before the trade deadline. So it's hard to imagine that a long-term deal comes through anytime soon. The issue is just what it will take to get a player like Juan Soto. I mean, it would have to be the biggest trade in history. And so you have to on both ends, you have to convince ownership that you made the right choice here. On the National side, they got to really get back a lot of good players, because you're replacing one player's production with it's going to take 4 or 5 to do that. And then the team that tries to acquire him, I mean, your team may suddenly be Juan Soto and nobody else, because you had to trade so many guys to get him back. And then you're kind of in the Nationals position right now where it's Juan Soto and nobody else. So you have to really it has to be the right situation. And I think that's going to be hard to find. So there's also no indication that he would sign an extension with the team that he goes to. So you have to be comfortable making a trade like that for 2.5 years of him.
I can see why someone who's only 23 years old would maybe not want to sign away such a long-term deal and stay in the same place and not have the opportunity to at least test the market and set records. How much do you think that plays into him not signing the extension? Just being young and kind of wanting to maybe experience different things with his career.
Yeah, I think it matters. I think I wrote yesterday, I think he's kind of enjoying this. Like, I don't think he's happy that it came out during the season. I think it's made for some uncomfortable conversations. But this is a showman. This is a guy who really thrives in the spotlight. And right now he's playing for the worst team in the sport, and nobody is talking to or about him. And so as of, a week ago, and this gives him a chance to be back in the spotlight a little bit. And I think that's fun for him. I think he likes the idea of testing free agency, because he likes the idea of getting to choose his destination. He likes the idea of getting to choose a team that's good, where he can be in the conversation. He wants to be a superstar, and getting to free agency is a good way to do that.
So before we turn our attention to Aaron Judge, I want to ask a question about him. I just have to read this quote. I mean, it goes through obviously the extension offer and him turning it down, whether he's going to be traded. And they asked him about all this going on. And he said, I'm a lone survivor. I've been going through all this stuff, and I'm still here standing up with my chin up all the time. And that shows you I can go through anything. Dude got offered $440 million. I mean, are we supposed to really look at that comment and say, oh, Juan, I hope you're okay? What you've been through.
Adversity.
Exactly. We would all love that adversity. Before I get to Aaron Judge, is there no doubt in your mind, wherever he ends up, the deal will be at least for $440 million? I guess it would have to be for that long of time as well. But by average per year, do you think it will be what it's at now?
Yes. For Soto, I think so. I think that I don't think that they had such a problem with the number, to be honest. I think it's that it was over 15 years. They didn't like that the average annual value is like 20th in the sport. They want to set a record in dollars, and they want to set a record in AAV. And so, 440 over 10, I think we would have been talking, but they don't view 440 over 15 as a real offer. They think that's it about pumping up showing a new owner, look how hard we're trying to sign this guy, because they think it's so obvious that he should make more in dollars and more in average than any player ever. So I think that's what it would take to sign him, is more in dollars, more in AAV.
At least I'm happy to see these big deals to a 23-year-old or a 25-year-old or a 26-year-old. When you give that 10-year deal to a 30-year-old, the last 4 or 5 years are going to be horrific on that. So at least that's a step in the right direction. Then, as I said, we have Aaron Judge, who kind of bet on himself after not taking the offer in the offseason. And boy, it sure looks to be panning out. What's going on that with the extension? And will they get through that at all?
Yeah, I think with Aaron Judge, it's interesting. He's having an incredible season, but I'm not sure he's doing that much to change his value on the free agent market. And the reason is that nobody wonders if Aaron Judge is an incredible player. The question is just, can he stay healthy? And he can't really prove that. I mean, he could have gotten hurt this season. That would have been a huge problem for him. But as long as he stays healthy, I don't think GMs feel like they're operating with any new information. So I think he will get, I think people felt like the Yankees made him a pretty fair offer. He may not get, he'll get more than that. It only takes one team, but he may not get that much more than that. But I think that's, he's another guy who feels like he's earned the right to test his value on the market. I think he certainly has. He's a, sort of a late bloomer who figured it out. And the question is just, how does a body type like that age? How does a guy of that size, when does his back start hurting? When do his knees start hurting? We just don't have a lot of information about players of that size. And he does have an injury history. And so he will just have to convince some GM or some owner, really. A deal of this size is an ownership decision. He'll convince an owner that he can stay healthy, and that will work out for him.
Steph, we were talking about how baseball sees the home run derby as being a success this year and changing the format up. It seems like they're also trying to change the draft and make that more like the NFL draft now, putting it on TV and trying to make it more like an event. Do you see that as something that baseball was happy with this year, or do you think there are going to be more changes to come in the future with that event?
I think the league was pretty happy with the draft this time. They're at a bit of a disadvantage compared to other sports because everybody else can do the draft in the off season and make it a huge event when fans are kind of missing that sport. But in baseball, the off season is the middle of the school year. And so they can't ask players to make a decision about their future at that point. So this is kind of the best they can do, is try to do it All-Star week, and the focus is on the sport and on nothing. I think the next big step for baseball will be to find a way to make the futures game a bit of a bigger deal, because the other problem with the MLB draft is that you hear about these guys and then you don't hear about them again for 6 years. And so fans don't watch college baseball. It's hard, or not a lot of fans. So it's hard to convince fans that they should care about these guys they're not going to hear about again for a while. Whereas the futures game is full of players you might see this season. In some cases, players have to be removed from the roster because they've already been called up.
Right.
So I think it's a mistake by the league to hold that on a Saturday up against regular season games. I think that should be that could be Sunday night, that could be Wednesday. I think that they could find a way to make that a bigger event, because you're about to hear about those guys.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. They can control when they do it, but the one thing, unfortunately, they can't control, like football and basketball, you immediately see those players playing for those teams, and you can associate. You just don't know in baseball when you're going to be able to see them. Last one from me, Steph. As far as baseball and the rules that have been implemented this year or maybe implemented soon, how do you think that's all been going, and what do you see next?
I think the one that people are most talking about is the pitch clock, and I think that's going to be the one that's going to have the most effect. People are talking about banning the shift, and I think they will probably try to do that, and I think that's too bad. I don't think that one's going to work as well as they think it will, and I also think it takes something away from the game to say you can't play the best defense you can. But I think the pitch clock is great because it's already in the rules that they're not supposed to be taking forever. And I think that would fix a lot of the problems with the game right now. The biggest problem is that you want to see more action on offense. And the reason we don't see more action on offense is that it's really hard to hit. Pitching is too good. So a way to make the pitching less good is to give them less time between pitches. They can't rear back. They can't be throwing their absolute best stuff all the time. And so I just think in addition to making the game faster and more action-packed because there's less standing around waiting for the pitcher to throw, I think that would be really helpful when it comes to making it a little bit easier to hit. And I think that's what fans want to see. They want to see the ball in play.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
Also make the games like a tiny bit shorter. Maybe.
Except that some pitchers don't like it, but they get used to it. Ones in the minors are already used to it.
Yep, they are. You're right. Yep.
And the pitches are so fast you can't even see it anyways. Rather see a ball in play. All right, Steph, thank you so much for joining us. We'll let you go. We know you're in a hotel conference room right now and have to go do more important things, but we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, I apologize to your listeners. I am between a bathroom and a conference room that the commissioner is about to speak in. Sorry.
That's okay. You're right in the mix, Steph. You are right in the mix.
Exactly.
I'm
there
gonna
you go.
if there's a GM on his way to the bathroom, I'll be here.
Giving us credibility by being next to the bathroom at the conference room. So thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Well,
Take
thanks
care.
a lot for having me, guys.
Bye.
Right. See ya.
Bye.
Wow, that was great talking to Steph. I mean, a great amount of information, and I love how she's right there. You can see if you're watching on YouTube, people walking back and forth. I mean, that's what happens when you go to these events and you're by the media center. And she was getting ready to go talk with Rob Manfred. I mean, she's right in the heart of everything. And to me, Jess, the All-Star game is fine to watch. I mean, I don't mind watching it, but I love the home run derby. And I know that's what we started with Steph talking about. Again, Juan Soto beat Julio Rodriguez. Julio Rodriguez really stole the show, the 21-year-old Seattle Mariner who's making the league minimum, as we talked about, $700,000. He won $500 last night. Soto won $1 million for winning it. But I definitely am a fan, as I said when Steph was on, of kind of the new way they're doing the home run derby.
Can I make an admission to you, Mike?
Yeah.
I know, we were talking about me being on vacation and like I have a little vacation brain going on right now. I didn't watch the home run derby last night. Do you know why I didn't watch the home run derby? Why
didn't you?
Because my favorite television show was on.
Were you watching The Bachelorette?
I was watching Better Call Saul.
Oh, okay. Don't say a word because I still have those. Are you? How close are you to being done with it?
Well, I'm caught up. Last night was the new episode. It was live. It was on from 9 to 10 on AMC. Actually, I think it ended at 10:30. And my boyfriend was not very happy because he wanted to watch the home run derby. And I said, you can watch that on your phone because I can't watch AMC on my phone. I need to watch it on the TV on cable. So that's what I did. I saw the very end of the home run derby, but I kind of missed the whole exciting part with Pujols. I had to fake it a little bit with Steph just now. I can't fake it with you, though. I know that I have to kind of come clean. For anyone who wants to talk about Better Call Saul, send me a message on Twitter because we can't talk about it here.
No way. Absolutely.
And a lot of people aren't caught up yet, but it was so good. I'm very happy with my choice to have watched it. So you can tell me about the derby now.
So I have to say that you watched it live. I can't remember the last time I've watched one of the series that I watch live. It's always taped. It's always afterward, and I download a lot of it for when I travel to watch. So I have never seen Better Call Saul live, ever. It's always been.
Yeah, I think it's the only show that I watch live now because
Really?
I don't want to get. I really like it. I don't want to get anything spoiled from it. I've been watching Breaking Bad since like 2000, I don't even know, like 13. So it's been a long time commitment, and there's 5 episodes left of the entire thing from like the entire cinematic universe. So I feel like for 5 weeks I can commit to watching a show live, even though I usually don't do that, and I usually download things too, like you do. So this is really, really a rarity for me.
So just tell me this. I don't want to hear anything about it, but because it's been a while and now we got the first one and 5 more. Was this one more a setup to what's going to happen, or did they dive right into some good action?
I would say the last episode. So the season split in half. This is the final season.
Right.
The first episode of the second half of the season, they dove right into the action. In this episode, they set things up a little bit, and there was a really unexpected thing that happened at the end that made me, I will say, kind of profoundly sad, but also very intrigued as to what is going to happen now with the final 5 episodes.
So they got exactly what they wanted out of you. They
oh yes, I'm so hooked on this.
Yeah.
I'm so hooked on this, Mike.
Oh, I can't. So I can't wait to see it. So to me, that is a fine reason to miss the home run derby. The home run derby, again, I dig it. I like it. Albert Pujols was kind of one of those where he's 42 years old. You know, it's the last time because it's the last season. You were kind of holding your breath, like, God, is he gonna hit a few home runs? I mean, is this gonna be, because he was the last seed? Kyle Schwarber was how he was the top seed, I have no idea. How was Alonso not the top seed, who had won Pete Alonso the last 2? But so there was a little bit of breath holding, and I was just hoping he would get to double digits, and he did. And then Schwarber did, and they actually went into like overtime.
Yeah.
And Pujols won. So, but it was very cool seeing kind of the reverence all the other players, and obviously there are other players there who weren't in it that are always, just like the slam dunk contest. There's a ton of other players there. reverence they showed Pujols, that was there, and the respect was very, very cool. But I was kind of rooting at the end of it for Julio Rodriguez, the young kid, really out of nowhere. He was amazing. He was hitting in the first 2 rounds. He hit over 30 home runs. Just this young kid with so much energy and power, and got to the finals against Soto, as we've already talked about. And Soto gets the win there, the man who turned down $440 million. So like I said, I'll watch the game and stuff, but I like the other challenges. Like in basketball, I don't so much like the All-Star game as I like the 3-point, the dunk, though the dunk is kind of by the wayside.
Right.
Some of the skills challenges, I kind of like those, in hockey when they do kind of the targets, on the nets and the speed and stuff like that. So I kind of dig that stuff more. So I thought it was a good one. I thought a lot of people got their eyes open to this Rodriguez kid. So, we'll see where it goes as we start what they call the second half of the baseball season. Trade deadline, I believe, August 2nd. We talked about Soto. Steph didn't think he was going to be traded. Obviously, we talked about Aaron Judge as well, the money he turned down in the offseason. But it still blows my mind that somebody got offered basically a lottery ticket and turned it down. I mean, that is, I'm sure he figures he's going to get it. But, man, you never know what happens the next day on the field, right? And he could have had guaranteed $440 million, and he turned it down.
Well, I agree with you, but I think for all the reasons Steph laid out, I totally do see where he's coming from. The thing that is hard for regular people like you and me to wrap our minds around is a $440 million deal to do anything. I cannot imagine. I feel like even the top of our profession, Mike, like the Joe Bucks of the world, they're not getting anywhere close to that.
No.
And no one's getting a 15-year deal for anything. It is hard to fathom, but when you are the best in the world at doing something that is highly valued, you get to turn that down and hopefully get more.
I was amazed at that. That kind of was jaw dropping, but he's going to get it. And plus, when you're that young, he's 23. You think you're invincible. Hell, I was an average player in the NFL, and I thought I was invincible. I'm not going to get hurt. It's not going to happen to me. So you just go play, and you just think everything is going to work out just fine. And I think it will for him.
And our producer just sent a note that Tom Brady will be getting close to that at Fox. He's right. Tom Brady did sign the 10-year, $375 million deal. But still, it's not 15,440. He's got, a ways to go. So, Tom, I don't know, do better. I'm not impressed anymore. No. Not the biggest contract I've seen.
Nope. You've been outdone, Tom. So, step it up, right? Step it up. God. All right. So that's where we are in baseball. So we can finally kind of get back to football. Some of the rookies have reported in a handful of NFL teams. College is getting ready to go in a couple of weeks as well. But again, for those, if you don't know, and I don't know how you wouldn't if you listen to this podcast, both Jess and I are graduates of Notre Dame. And here's Notre Dame back in the news again. We had talked about, or last week when you were on vacation, I had Sean Salisbury sit in, and which worked out pretty well because he's a USC grad, and USC and UCLA just moving to the Big Ten. And we were talking about what's Notre Dame going to do. And one of the things I had said, Jess, was, and I think Jack Swarbrick has been playing this thing great. It also helps when you have all the leverage in the world.
True.
When you kind of, as we have said, you're the prettiest girl at the dance and everybody's coming to ask you to dance, is I said, there'll be a line somewhere of what kind of TV deal they can get for them. Because people say, how will they stay independent? They'll stay independent if there's a clear path to the playoffs and they're making enough money. I don't care who you are. You can never tell me it's not somewhere about money. It just is. So so I said last week, what's going to be that line, of making enough money as independent and having a clear path to turn down or not go to the Big Ten? And let's also be honest, if they go to a conference, it's going to be the Big Ten, not the ACC. And we may have found it, Jess. We may have found it. I mean, they're looking for basically $75 million a year from a TV partner, whether it's NBC or not. There's 2 more years on that deal, and they're making, I think they said $15 to $20 million a year right now. Now they're looking for $75 million. So maybe we're finding that line that will keep them independent.
Right, and this report was by Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports, and so it was saying that the Notre Dame could kind of use the Big 12 to get a bigger deal, and with NBC or even with another network, and it could mean that like there would be a Big 12 game leading into a Notre Dame game,
Right.
or vice versa, to kind of like add shoulder content or shoulder programming, I think was the
Right,
word used,
right.
or the term
It was
used.
it.
So I don't know how this makes you feel as a Big 12 fan that you're being used now to
Yeah.
bolster Notre
Yeah.
Dame's rights negotiation, but I guess if you're getting more primetime TV or a game bumped up like next to a Notre Dame game, that's probably good for them in the long run too. Notre Dame obviously has a few games a year that end up in the top 10 of all the ratings, so you
Right.
know it probably is mutually beneficial. But yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if it's Notre Dame, you know, sending a message to NBC with this report that this is what they want and this is the number that it needs to be for them to stick around, or they're going to go start shopping with another network to stay independent, or they're going to join the Big Ten and then NBC doesn't get anything from them.
Right.
Or if this is really like in the works and this is what the Big 12 wants and this is what Notre Dame wants and this is what NBC wants. So it'll be interesting to see how it happens. And I think that it's so fascinating how this is all just, you know, basically just media rights deal negotiations that then are shaping the entire landscape of a sport that has millions of fans, and not the other way around. Like the teams aren't doing the best thing for, you know, their players and their fans. It's the TV networks. By extension, I guess you could say that the teams are getting a lot of money, so that helps.
Yeah.
But it's just fascinating to see how it all shake out amongst the different broadcast networks.
It will make Big 12 people hate Notre Dame even more that they're considered shoulder programming,
Right.
even though, like you said, it could be beneficial to both. But, you know, a lot of them won't see it that way. You know, the alums of those Big 12 schools will just hate Notre Dame probably even more. You're right.
Everyone already does. So what?
That's exactly right. So who gives a shit? You know, as far as these deals, you know, Fox already talking, you know, we're talking about $1 billion for the Big 10. They're sitting in a phenomenal position right now. So yeah, Notre Dame, I think, you know, listen, that they're in a position to play it how they want because they are wanted. But if they could get there, if again, have their cake and eat it too, have a clear path as an independent and make enough money to say, we're going to stay independent, that would be something. So time will tell. We'll have to wait and see where that goes. And I know there's some other Notre Dame news as well. Now, a lot of this was going on when Mike and Jake were on the team. A lot of it, all of it, actually.
All of it.
As leading up to that year when they went undefeated before they played Alabama in the national championship. The whole Manti Te'o, you know, the all-everything linebacker for Notre Dame, and what went on with his situation of, you know, the fake girlfriend and such. And he's got a docuseries coming out on Netflix.
Yeah, I know that a lot of Notre Dame fans that I'm friends with are not looking forward to seeing more Manti Te'o coverage. And I think it's probably because if you've been on the internet or at a football game for the last 10 years, that has been like an insult thrown in the face of like every Notre Dame fan. And like the fake girlfriend thing became a meme. But I am interested to see it. I hope that it's good. Obviously, I'm glad that Manti is participating in it because I think his side of the story is really the only side of the story that I'm interested in now 10 years later, because he did do some media interviews at the time. I think he was on Good Morning America right after it happened. But now that it's like 10 years in the rearview mirror, I know it's crazy that it's been that long. I am really curious to hear what his kind of retrospective opinion is on it, because he was so young when it happened, and like, you know, I was so young when it happened too. I was only like 18 years old, I think. I was a freshman in college, and so my opinion on all of what happened has changed so much in the years since now, with a better understanding of like the internet and catfishing. So I don't know. I'm interested to watch it. I hope it's good. I think it will be, but I can see why some Notre Dame fans are not thrilled about it.
It will be interesting, and this is all going to be from Manti's side now. And one thing that I have known over the years is kind of what went on when you have two kids on the team. You know, within the locker room, you kind of get stories, again, a lot that didn't even come out public, but of what's going on and when things were found out and what happened from there. I am interested to see if what he says kind of jives with what the players were talking about that season, because it was such a great season. We traveled all the games. A lot of the parents traveled to the home game, obviously the home games, but away games. So we were all a tight knit group. And then when that all started coming out and we started hearing stories about it. So it will be interesting to me. And I'm sure he's happy he's telling his side of it, how much his side again fits with what the players were talking about. So I just have to kind of wait and see on that. That's going to be interesting.
I feel like you should have been interviewed for this documentary, Mike. I did text Gojo and say, were you interviewed for this? And he said no.
There may be a reason that, and I don't know what players were. I mean, I don't know who was. I absolutely do not know, but that will be telling as well. I think if there were no teammates interviewed, I think that, don't you think that would be pretty telling?
That would be interesting. Well, I mean, we can discuss more on August 17th after the documentary comes out. So stay tuned for that episode of Golic and Smetty.
That will be interesting. Again, I'm glad he's telling his side, but as I said, being I wasn't part of it, but knowing people that were part of it and hearing the stories of just how much, kind of lines up together. So that's our Notre Dame portion.
And that's a teaser for next month.
Yeah, yes, it is. I'm looking forward to it. Now we're getting ready to something I never looked forward to, Jess, and that was training camp. I hated training camp. I mean, usually about a week or so before training camp started, my wife was ready for me to leave because I started kind of getting that. Because when I played 9 years, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 of them, I felt pretty confident I was going to be on that team. The other ones, you but never completely sure. Maybe a couple of years. The other years, you're fighting for a spot, on the roster, hoping to make the team. So she was always like out a week or so before. She was like, man, I wish you were gone because you need to get out of here. I started getting kind of that feeling,
antsy.
Antsy, amped up a little bit. And I hate it. There was only one guy that I knew that loved training camp, and that was Jim McMahon. When we were teammates in Philadelphia. Now, quarterbacks should love it anyway because they don't get hit.
They don't get hit. Yeah, right.
Nothing. So, but Jim really, really loved it. And he was such a great teammate and still a really good friend today. But yeah, now I know training camp's different now, and I'm not going to sit here and rip on players today. They negotiated for this. They got it. More power to them. I would have loved to never have 2 padded practices in a row. I would have loved that. There were times we could go in pads day after day after day, and they're not allowed to now. And that's fine. Again, that's what they negotiated. So that's what they got. But
I complain about podcasting twice in a day, Mike. Yeah. I can't imagine sweating in the August heat in my pads twice a day.
We would sometimes we would have the morning practice and the afternoon practice in pads, and sometimes special teams practice in the middle of that would be in pads as well. So there'd be times we'd be in pads 3 times during the day and it could be more than one day. There weren't many rules that govern that back then like there are today. Again, I'm not going to sit here and I'm saying these guys, more power to them to do that. But it is the start. I mean, it's the start. It is an antsy time for you to have to go prove yourself, in front of a new group. You went from the high of either getting drafted or sometimes, not drafted, obviously, but being that upperclassman now to being a rookie and learning how a whole new league works. And as I've always said, you can be considered a professional, but it doesn't make you a pro. You have to learn that. And that's when, we talk about old school, that the old guy sitting on the porch and being mad at what's going on. And I've always said, I try not to be that guy, but I do think, Jess, there's a mixture between the two. And the one thing, my dad told me, and I would tell my kids, that's something that I do agree with, maybe not as harshly as this, but when you go into a new setting, my dad would say, keep your mouth shut and your eyes and your ears open. There are people there that have been through it. So learn from them. Don't walk into, I didn't walk into as a freshman in high school or a freshman at Notre Dame or a rookie in the NFL thinking I knew all the answers. There are people that were upperclassmen in high school and college and then veterans in the NFL that have been through this and were around, and you can learn from them. And I still think that always, it's true in a business. I mean, you leave college and go to some company. I mean, it would behoove people to look at people who have been there a while and how are they doing it? How are they successful? So that's always something that I don't know how much gets lost today, but I hope players still do stuff like that.
I feel like that's all. I mean, I think young people still kind of go into, at least I, speaking from experience, you go into like your first job or your first like whatever it is, and you kind of try to absorb everything. And then there always comes a time where you get like a little older and wiser and you realize like, oh, some of the people in charge, like, they just get to be in charge. Maybe they're not as smart as I thought one. That is not speaking from experience, because I've worked with some really great people. But then you always kind of will work with that one person that you realize they are actually really good and like really special, and they're a coach that you look up to. So I feel like that mentality for a lot of people still exists. Like it's important to learn before you try to change everything.
But sometimes, you're right. And sometimes that you think because people hold a certain position in a company that they're smart.
Right. And that's not true.
Then later on you're going, how in the hell did they get that position? They're idiots.
And then you hope for the same for yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. But man, I'll never forget my first training camp back in '85 with the Houston Oilers, how paranoid I was that we went to like San Angelo State, which is like 4 or 5 hours away from Houston because it wasn't humid. It was a dry heat. So we went out there, and I'll never forget, we stayed in shitty dorms, but that's what you did way back when.
Right.
And I had a clock in the dorm room, and I wouldn't believe it. Like I probably woke up every hour, just nervous that I would oversleep. I would look at the clock in my room, and I wouldn't believe it. So Jess, I would get up, walk into the hallway, and look at the clock in the hallway to make sure it matched the clock in my room, just so I wouldn't oversleep. Next thing you know, the horn's going off at 6:30 in the morning. I'm like, shit, I barely slept. Now I got to go practice. Oh yeah. I mean, the paranoia that, because I was again, this is back when the draft was 12 rounds. I was a 10th rounder. So, you certainly don't have an automatic spot on the team, and you're just paranoid. You can't do anything wrong. So my God, I mean, the nervousness was palpable.
Well, that's certainly not the same for the sports media industry. No one wakes me up with a horn, but I do get anxious sometimes that I'm going to oversleep my alarm, and that Billy Gill will yell at me at work, but it's not that big of a threat.
I've had media tell me that they get bummed out, like when they're covering training camp, if the icing machine isn't working and they can't get snow cone or something. Yeah, bastards.
Covering football, way more fun than playing football, probably.
I would agree with that. But to all the guys that are going to make that roster out there, and even if you don't, and you still want to give it a shot, man, do it as long as you can until you feel you got to make that move. But this is the start of it right now. This is the start of a lot of people's career. So it's always interesting to see where it goes. And I'm glad I'm not doing it anymore, because people always ask, hey, could you still play? I'm like, shit. I said, I'm 59. I said, I give you 2 plays. The first play I would get hurt. I would try and go the second play, and then they'd have to carry me off the field. But you never lose that love for wanting to play on game day. I said, I'd still suit up for game day, but I couldn't do what it took. You can't do what it takes anymore, obviously, because that's always been the interesting thing with people that retire. They don't retire because they don't like football anymore. They don't want to do that off season of work that you have to do to get ready for it. And this is part of it, man. You get to that training camp. Let me tell you, and another thing, everybody retires at some point in their mind in training camp. Everybody. They're like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. Oh my, the horn goes off. I can't do this anymore. This is the last time.
What if I just quit?
Yeah. And then you just get your ass up and you just go eat, you go get taped, and you walk out in the field and beat yourself up. That's just kind of the way it goes.
Are you excited to watch Hard Knocks? It's going to be the Detroit Lions this season. And I know, actually, Mike, Sid and I have a friend who plays for the Lions who I think will be featured on Hard Knocks. He's got a pretty interesting story, Romeo Okwara. He started playing football a little bit later in his teens, ended up playing at Notre Dame. That's where, Sid and I met him. And he's a really, really accomplished photographer.
Friends with John Mayer, great friends. With John Mayer. I mean, and you always on his Insta stories.
He's got to get Stugatz and I backseat tickets for a Dead & Co. concert,
it's
Mike.
Unbelievable. But yes, he is not only a great player, but you're right. He does have that love for photography. And I without question, I think he'll be, because he's just got a great personality. Hard Knocks overall, a lot of it is the editing and what HBO wants to make out of it. But there is a lot of real in it. And I think with Dan Campbell, to me, you always wonder which players are going to be the stars, but I think Dan Campbell has a good shot because he's an emotional guy, former tight end, still got that great build on him, tough guy, talking about biting kneecaps in his first, first press conference. So I think he's going to be one of those guys. But yeah, I like watching it. Over the years, maybe not as much. But
the first episode I'll always watch. The fourth, usually I've tapered off my my interest level. And you're right, Dan Campbell's a coach that I haven't decided yet if he fits in the box of like guy who got his job because he's talented and like will be successful, or guy who you start working for and you're like, so you can just be a guy and coach in the NFL. I guess good for him. So I don't know. I think the jury's out. I definitely have heard analysis go both ways for him. So I'm interested to see how that plays out this season. Yeah,
I wonder because if it's Detroit, if a lot of people are just going to get turned off automatically. But I think you and I are the same in the fact that we're going to watch it early, give it a chance, and then kind of over the last few years, it's kind of tapered and we've lost interest. So let's see if this one holds interest. So, well, time will tell.